This program airs statewide on California Public Television and is a California's Gold classic. This series is endorsed by the California Teachers Association, the California School Boards Association, and the California Library Association. Hi everybody, I'm Huell Hauser, and here we all are on deck having our morning coffee as we're heading up the Mississippi River. There it is, right there, the mighty Mississippi. And it's a beautiful morning. The sky's blue, the water is calm, all's right with the world. Now you may be asking yourself about now, what in the world are they doing so far away from California? Well, we're here looking for part of our state's rich past, part of our state's history. And if you're curious as to what we're looking for, well, as always, you're invited to come on along with us as we continue, this time on the Mississippi River, our search together for California's gold. There used to be lots of steamboats in California, most of them operating in the Sacramento River Delta. And two of the most popular were the Delta King and the Delta Queen. Starting back in 1927, these two twin paddlewheelers made runs back and forth between Sacramento and San Francisco, providing overnight service for tourists and business people traveling between the two cities. When World War II came along, both the Delta King and the Delta Queen were called into duty, painted navy gray, and used to ferry troops to and from transport ships in San Francisco Bay. After the war, the Delta King fell into terrible disrepair. After years, was finally restored, and today is tied up in old Sacramento. Now its engines have been removed, so it's not able to travel the waterways anymore, but it's used as a restaurant and a hotel, and is much loved by all who come aboard. Now the Delta Queen had a much different fate. After the war, it was taken out of service and put into the Naval Reserve Fleet at Benicia, California, where in 1946 it was purchased by Captain Tom Green and his wife, who were owners of Cincinnati's Green Line. They decided to board up the old steamboat and tow her all the way from San Francisco through the Panama Canal to the Mississippi River. The trip covered 5,261 miles of open sea and took 29 days. But the proud old paddlewheeler made it. And today, not only is it still operating in the Mississippi and other rivers, but it's been designated a National Historic Landmark. Now, truth of the matter is, even though the Delta Queen is back east these days, she still originally was a California steamboat. She was built in Stockton and spent the first 20 years of her life in California waters. And to celebrate her California heritage, a group of good California citizens traveled to the Mississippi River, boarded the Delta Queen, and experienced firsthand the history and charm of this fine example of California's gold. Let's go back in time for a minute and pretend like we're on the deck of the Delta Queen as she's going down the Sacramento River from Sacramento to San Francisco back in 1932. What would we be experiencing right now?
One of the things I think was the nicest thing about it was a small, narrow river compared to the Mississippi, and you'd be looking at sometimes people on the shore, you'd almost reach out and touch them, and they felt the same way about the people on board. They could just see the faces and hear the music and everything. It just was very intimate.
Would it have been a lively experience? Would there have been a opportunity to meet new friends and have a social time, or what would it have been like on board?
Well, evidently the weekends got pretty exciting with parties, and during Prohibition, of course, the people brought their own liquor, and after Prohibition, why, there was a bar up on the next to the top deck, and so people had a great time, and some people drank and some didn't, but it sounded like a wonderful party time.
Was it a family boat or was it a party boat?
Well, I think it depended on who you were. I think the families that I talked to, people who were kids and grew up remembering the Delta King and Queen, were just so happy telling about it, and they were family when they went.
So looking out on the Mississippi now, the Sacramento River, the shore would be right in on us now, wouldn't it?
Right, right. It'd be like we experience occasionally here when we pull in close to the shore.
Uh-huh. Now, was it a big deal financially to travel on the Delta Queen?
The prices seem extremely low, but of course we were talking about a Depression era. You could go during the middle of the 1930s, you could go from San Francisco to Sacramento for $1.50 deck passage, then you could pay $1 for your room if you wanted a room. And then you could go round trip for $1.95.
Really? Round trip from San Francisco to Sacramento for $1.95?
Right. And then if you did want a room, you could pay for it. If you didn't, you could sleep in a chair or a bench. And then you had dinner for 75 cents or bring your own sack lunch.
Have you ever wondered what it would have been like to be a passenger on the old Delta Queen back in California in the 20s and 30s when she was in her heyday?
Yes, I really do. I thought about it a lot, and I've always wanted to take the trip from Sacramento to San Francisco or San Francisco to Sacramento.
Uh-huh.
But I was working, and I could not get off work in time to get the boat from either place.
Well, so you had to wait about 50 years and get on board on the Mississippi.
That's right, and I've waited, and this is my 8th trip.
Had you heard a lot about it? Was there a lot of talk about the Delta Queen back in those days in California?
Yes, I should say so. It was very well advertised, and there were a lot of people that were taking those trips down and back. And as I said, I've always wanted to do that, and I think it would have been a hilarious time because they had entertainment on the boat and the staterooms and dancing and just lots of fun.
So as a young girl, this was something you wanted to do?
That's right.
Did you think you would have found a romance on board?
You never know. That's what they say.
How hard is it to steer one of these big old boats?
We've got these 2 steering levers right here, and we just move them back and forth. If I want the boat to head to port, I just give it some left rudder, and she eventually goes that way, and then I straighten it up. I'll put it on midship again. And I look out, see what I'm looking at. I can tell by the king post if the boat is swinging to starboard or to port. I've also got instruments to tell me that. So it's all dead reckoning. You look out there, and what you see is what you get, and you make the boat do what you want it to do.
So you're basically doing what the pilots used to do 150 years ago on these rivers.
Roger, that's about it, except we've got these levers instead of a great big steering wheel.
Now, is this the famous whistle?
That's the famous Delta Queen whistle.
And they used these whistles a lot in the old days on the Delta Queen, didn't they?
Yes, they sure did. They ran a lot in fog on the Sacramento River, and when I understand it, they would bounce the whistle signal off the bluffs and hillsides and so on. They could tell by the length of time the echo got back to the boat where they were and how far they were from a certain place, and they used this quite a bit.
And this was their way of communicating with other boats, or?
Right. Before the days of radio, it was all done with whistle signals.
Now, is this the original? Everything else around here that's the original whistle?
This is the original whistle.
Where is the whistle itself?
It's right out behind, on the smokestack right behind us here, behind the pilot house.
And that's original too?
That's original
too. Can we go outside and let you blow the whistle, or is that going to give some indication to some boat down the river that, I mean...
No, I'll blow one that's kind of meaningless. A long and a short, they won't take that to mean anything.
Okay, we're going to go outside. It's going to be a long and a short.
Roger.
And that means nothing.
Roger, that's right.
All right, we've come outside, and I'm going to give the signal, and we're going to hear the whistle, the historic whistle. There it is right there on the Delta Queen. Oh my gosh. I had no idea it was gonna sound like that. That's a heck of a sound.
It sure is. You can hear that for miles and miles. And every boat used to have its own whistle and
Its own sound.
Its own sound, and you could almost tell who was blowing those whistles when in the old days.
Okay, now we're coming down. Now we're in the, where are we, Keith?
Well, we're in the engine room right now, and you might see this was Mr. Burns' office when he was an oiler here.
Mr. Burns, you were working on the Delta Queen back when? What years?
My start was in August of 1930.
Oh my gosh.
Well, I was a youngster, 20 years of age, and the engineer was very happy that I came aboard as the son of his boss.
Oh, I got you.
Now, this explains why I was so widely accepted in the company as a fireman.
At such a young age.
Yes, it wasn't for my super knowledge, it was who I was.
Well, at least you're honest about it.
Well,
what did it look just about like this back in 1930?
This engine room is exactly the same outside of the controls as it was when my dad built this engine room. So my job was to go around and squirt oil on, keep that oiler full, go up and do each one of these, everything that moves. You see that little cup up there, the little brass cup?
This one right here. You'd fill that.
My job was to go up there and fill that. So, see, and here, and all of this valve gear. Of course, those days we could climb right up there, you know, and do all of this. And
Did
then
it pay good money?
$80 a month.
Oh my gosh. You made $80 a month.
That's more than I make now.
Oh. Were you excited about working down here in the engine room of the Delta Queen? Was it a big deal?
Well, for a 20-year-old, my ego was just pumped up as high as it could go.
Yeah.
And when I, on my day off on Sundays, when I was talking to my friends at Oakland and telling them what I did every week, I was the envy of the neighborhood. Nobody had a job like I did. This was a speaking tube from the pilot house to the engine.
Look at this, Louis. Can I take this down? This is what you would speak into?
Yeah, we had a whistle. Didn't they have a
Get
whistle?
away with that.
Oh, with the whistle?
Don't have the
They
whistle.
used to have a brass whistle that they blew, and they blew a certain amount of times to tell you what they wanted you to do.
Then the engineer would converse with the pilot house through this.
So you wouldn't talk
this
through
was-
here, you'd blow a whistle through here.
Well, you'd blow a whistle. There was usually a whistle attached to this, and you blew your breath into the whistle. But this was modern equipment for communications.
Back in the 30s.
Yeah, this was a necessity, up to date.
State of the art.
Yes, yeah.
It's like 2 tin cans and a string.
Yeah.
Because you see now we have, not only do we have the telegraph, if something happens with it, we have the phone system over here. We have an intercom. Have a walkie-talkie over there that we can use also. And then if all that fails, we still have a sound-powered phone up here.
But back then, this was it.
That's it.
Now we're really in for a treat. Would you ever come back here, Mr. Burns?
This was one of the exciting parts of being an oiler. When you came out here, we didn't have this modern high-pressure greasing system on the eccentrics and on the crank and the main bearing. We did all this with a hand turn in between the arm coming down. Now we went out there and did our thing, got the hell out of the way before the crank came around.
Boy, in other words, while it was moving, you were oiling it.
We had to. We didn't have the modern high-pressure system that is taking care of all this lubrication. Now the oiler all he does is work back with the high-pressure system in the engine room.
So he can oil it remotely almost.
It's remote is the word.
Boy, I tell you what, I don't know whether the camera can capture the energy.
Oh, it's
but
tremendous.
this is amazing back here.
It really is tremendous. What you're seeing here is the conversion of horizontal recip motion, which you saw with the engines, horizontal reciprocation through the eccentric, into rotary back here in the paddle wheel. And it's just massive, massive power back here, isn't it?
Yes.
They're moving a lot of water here.
It sounds to me almost like a locomotive engine. Almost, you can imagine, like a steam locomotive exhaust here.
And to be out here, and I was expecting to see the wheel. I wasn't expecting to see this big, what do you call this?
Pitman. This is the Pitman arm.
The Pitman arm,
Yeah.
the way it goes around and brings that wheel around. That's amazing.
This converts horizontal motion to rotary motion.
Yeah.
Very simply.
It converts this kind of motion
Yeah. To
into this kind of
rotary.
motion.
Yes.
Now we're in one of these beautiful public areas, I guess you'd call them. Did the original Delta Queen, when she was on the Sacramento River, have areas like this?
Very much like this. As a matter of fact, I think you could probably say that it was exactly like this, except for a few minor changes. And these areas were the social areas of the boat. This particular area we're standing in now was the smoking room for the gentlemen. And the ladies had a cabin near the stern of the boat for the ladies' cabin. So this was usually the area they came into after dinner the evening. The men would have a cigar and after dinner drink and prepare for the evening in their staterooms.
So this was really a lively area in here.
Oh yes, very much so.
People kind of conversing and
A
making
lot of
new
conversations and meeting people and associates and maybe even doing a business deal or two.
Jerry, we're standing out here on the bow of the boat, looking up here at this. What do you call that? A stack of antlers?
A set of antlers, yes.
A set of antlers.
A gilded set of antlers. They're gold-colored to depict the supremacy of the boat, particularly in races. And this would be races on the western rivers, the Mississippi River system, and even the Sacramento system.
So the antlers depict what? What is it?
They depict supremacy and speed on the river.
I got
as a
you.
racer or as a boat.
So if you were riding on a steamboat that had a set of antlers on the front, you were on a fast boat.
You were on a fast steamboat.
Now, is that the only thing they would have on the boats?
No, on one occasion or another, there was a case where they did use a broom turned upside down with the sweeper on the top to show a clean sweep. And they often carried that atop the pilot house as an indication of speed, too.
If they had won all the races.
If they had won all the races with the boats in the area, yes.
I tell you what, the place is full of history here. Everywhere you look, it takes you back to times past.
Yes, it does, both here and on the Sacramento River, yes.
And there's also something else. I just cannot pass up the opportunity to just relate everybody at home. When you are standing here, looking out at the river, in the afternoon, it's about 5:30, and you see this kind of reflection on the water. It's peaceful. It's quiet, you can hear the water. It is just truly a spectacular experience riding on one of these steamboats. Okay, now we're in the main dining room, which brings the question up as to what the dining experience would have been like back on the Delta Queen back when she was in California.
The dining experience would have been much like it is today, because dining was a major feature of steamboats or riverboats. They took great pride in their fares and their meals and served them with great elegance.
Even though this was just an overnight trip from Sacramento to San Francisco.
Even though it was just an overnight trip, riverboats had this distinction of being measured by their fares, by their meals, and they took great pride in preparing the finest and serving it most elegantly.
Now, would there have been a band and music, or is this a little much for an overnight trip?
For an overnight trip, that may have been a little much, although there may have been a piano playing or perhaps some light string music during this period.
And what would we have eaten?
We would have eaten anything. There would have been fish and fowl and beef and pork. Many of the meals would have been as elegantly served and prepared as it would be today, and probably a lot of the fresh produce of the valley during that time, and the finest of wines from California.
Well, I tell you what, the tradition continues, because look at this. It's a beautiful, elegant dining experience still elegant after all these years aboard the Delta Queen. Now we're out here at night, Jerry, because
this would very well could have been the Sacramento River in 1928 or 29, as it was with the Delta Queen running on her evening run from Sacramento to San Francisco.
I think sometimes we forget that these were night runs, that most of the passengers on board the Delta Queen when she was in California were on her at night.
I think this is something that most people don't really realize, and that's the reason there's so few photographs available of the boats, because the Delta King and Delta Queen traveled as night boats between San Francisco and Sacramento, or vice versa.
And what the passengers would have seen at night was
much...
this. There's nothing really to see except kind of a tranquil evening feeling.
I agree with you 100%. I think they'd see the twilight and the end of the day and hear the soft water flapping on the boat hull.
Yeah, and also the river takes on a little different feel to it at night. We're really kind of at sunset here. It has its own different feel at night.
There's a mood established in the evening on the river that is a mood established no place else or any other time on the river, because of the soft pastel colors as they begin to set the sun. It's beautiful.
And this could have been what we would have seen on the Sacramento River years ago on board the Delta Queen.
Absolutely. It would not have been much different than we're experiencing this evening.
Okay, with all this talk about the Delta Queen California connection, and make no doubt about it, the Delta Queen was a California steamboat, right? Right. It was built in Stockton, and for 20 years, between 1927 and 1947, it operated all the way through the California Delta, going between Sacramento and San Francisco. And we think it's high time, right? Right. That we reestablish this California connection. So on behalf of all the people of California, what we're going to do right now is to reclaim, to take back the old Delta Queen for all the people of California. Even though it is operating on the Mississippi River these days, it is still very much a California steamboat, and it is still a fine example of California's gold, right? Right. Hit it, fellas!
Cruising down the river on the steamer Delta Queen, you'll meet the nicest folks of all that you have ever seen. The calliope is playing, it's a sentimental scene when you're cruising down the river on the steamer Delta Queen. All my friends are singing with me in the Texas lounge each night, while the orchestra is playing in the Orleans for your delight. So for a real vacation, just the best you've
Well, hello everybody, I'm Huell Hauser, and I sure hope you enjoyed this adventure. If you'd like to see it again or share it with your family or friends, or perhaps donate a copy to your local school or library, it's available on video cassette and on DVD. All you have to do is call 1-800-266-5727 and we'll be glad to send it to you right away. Well, hello everybody, I'm Huell Hauser with a quick Delta Queen update, because since we rode on the good old Delta Queen a couple of years ago, she's no longer going up and down the Mississippi River. In fact, she's not going anywhere. She's sitting dead still and being used as a hotel in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Now, the good news is her boilers and all the equipment is still inside, so eventually she could hit the rivers again, either the Mississippi River or, my dream, she would come back to California where she belongs, because the good old Delta Queen is in fact not only a California steamboat, but very much a part of California's gold.